Hello everybody, and thank you so much for coming to my channel, The Real Life Genius Show. Today we're gonna cover the Kundalini and the Chakras. Kundalini was a totally unknown word to me when I first came aware of its power. It was some time before I realized what had happened. I will tell you a little bit about my experience in one of the Kundalini rises, as the Kundalini has different layers and it tends to come at different points in your life. When I became aware of what was going on, I began a frantic search for any books or information online, took classes, and 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago, I even went to the Art of Living in North Carolina to a Hindu retreat to be able to deal with that. It was not an easy road. It was interesting at times, dramatic, sometimes enlightening, and other times frightening. Kundalini is not a household word yet, but increasing numbers of people are not only aware of it, but living with its experiences, sometimes without knowing them. The Kundalini blues, as we're going to explain later, it is not yet an acceptable reason for staying home from work or not keeping up with the ancient things in real life. However, I hope that if you have a chronic illness or some kind of impediment, something like depression, that you can find some answers also here, as I believe that some of the answers might be also spiritual and come from the Kundalini rising or not being able to to that person to be able to deal with the Kundalini at its proper time or in the proper manner. I hope this video will alleviate some of the concerns, questions, and loneliness you might have, and I hope you find it worth your while. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please feel free to subscribe to the channel, as this is part 1 of a series of videos in which I will help you to understand some of the things that have to do with Kundalini and the chakras. Let's talk about Kundalini as an evolutionary energy, shall we? So everyone has an inner drive to excel or be special at something, to be unique. Sometimes people reach for this in negative ways. The underlying drive in all people, however, is one of evolution, to reach for enlightenment, to be godlike sometimes while still human. We're gonna talk about the Kundalini awakening. So, in the Upanishads, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, it is expressed that dwelling in this very body, we have somehow realized Brahman, the expansion, the evolution, the absolute creator, the preserver and destroyer of the universe. Otherwise, we should have remained ignorant and great destruction would have overtaken us. Those who know Brahman become immortal while others only suffer misery. We also have heard in the New Testament when Jesus answered, "It is not written in your own law, I said, you are gods? Those who are called gods, to whom the word of God was delivered, and a scripture cannot be set aside." John 10:34-35 in the New English Bible. We find that we are all called to go beyond our humanness towards greater heights. The Kundalini energy pushes each one of us towards this goal of enlightening, knowing the light and knowing God. In Tibetan yoga and in other secret doctrines, it's expressed by means of Sakti yoga or energy discipline. The tantric yogin attains discipline of body and mind, and then proceeds to the mighty task of awakening the dormant or innate powers of divinity within himself, personified as the sleeping goddess Kundalini. Then from the mystic union of Shakta, which is at the top of the head, and Sakti is born enlightenment, and the yogin has attained the goal. Kundalini, which is a Sanskrit word meaning circular power, is an individual's basic evolutionary force. Each of us is born with some of this energy already flowing. The amount available and usable determines whether a person has low intelligence, is a genius, or is somewhere in the middle. It is not just a matter of using what we already have, but of awakening the much greater amount waiting in the Kundalini reservoir located at the base of the spine. Kundalini is a natural force common to all of us. It is not a religion, although it is practiced by some religions, and the process can enhance and develop each person's own religious beliefs. Ancient Eastern literature contains a great deal of information on the Kundalini. This is not true of Western literature, but more is being written as we speak. As interest in the Aquarian age grows rapidly and brings stronger energies to facilitate spontaneous Kundalini releases, people in all walks of life, all ages, and all levels of growth are experiencing right now Kundalini rising, regardless of cultural, philosophical, or religious backgrounds. Little information is available for people who have not even heard of Kundalini and wonder at the causes of their physical, mental, or emotional suffering and breakdown. Even those in the growth and health fields don't have easy access to information for counseling those who release extra Kundalini before their systems are ready and experience problems of all levels of life. Pretty much, if you're releasing Kundalini energy before it's your time, it kind of feels as if 220 volts of electrical energy suddenly course through the 110 volt units of your body. Fusing blows and circuitry melts and other things. Now let's talk a little bit about this lack of information. There's a lot of people that are knowledgeable about the Kundalini's power and potential for harm, but yet they feel nothing should be done with it, no exercises and no training, because of the possibility that this awesome force will turn destructive. This attitude is much the same as of people who say that if you don't educate children about sex, there won't be any problems. Another reason, and I think this is the main reason that I found before I knew more about the Kundalini, is that many people regard Kundalini as a new age fad or a fad toy. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Kundalini can be considered the oldest known science. In previous ages, people raised Kundalini under the guidance of teachers and in controlled circumstances, preserving what they learned as an esoteric knowledge. But we have entered a period of time in which the esoteric becomes exoteric. People whose Kundalini was raised without their knowledge, relating symptoms of their condition to others, were generally considered crazy or physically weak. They might even have considered themselves crazy. And as you can see over here on the definition of Kundalini, I have a picture in this video, and you can see that there's different names for different parts of the body. Of course, they're talking about the names of the chakra and where they are located. Each one of the chakra, as we will see later, has a different color relating to the energy and the rotation and spin. Some people will call these nadis, although there's many of them. There are more than, we're going to talk about chakras too, but there are more than 300 and some chakras. But normally people either talk about the main 7 or the main 12. As you can see here, they're mentioning the main 7. This is from a Native American drawing and a representation of the energy centers and the subtle system. The subtle system is underneath of the it's kind of hard to explain, but let me explain to you because it's kind of complicated. I really don't want to get to it too much right now. But pretty much we have 7 different bodies, and of course we have the physical body, right? And then we have the our body with our organs, which is our vital body. But there's also something, a little layer on top of the on the vital body, which is called the subtle system, or the subtle layer. Some people call that the morphological fields. The morphological fields, you're not gonna find that in any Western medicine kind of journal or anything like that, because it is something that is from Eastern cultures, and we know of it because of Chinese, Hindu, and Native American texts, and of course Sumerian texts, other cultures from a long time ago, more than 5,000 years ago. These cultures recorded what is called the nadis, or centers. They're used in acupuncture, but those centers are not in the body, even though when they do acupuncture, they will try to find, obviously, a point which is closely related to something that is a physical point on the body in itself. But in reality, they're using something called the morphological fields, which is pretty much energy fields underneath or on top of our virtual body. I hope I can talk more about that later on. So the important thing here to relate is that when there is imbalances in the body or changes in the Kundalini, as the Kundalini will have different phases over the lifetime of a person and different layers. Some layers you might not notice over time, but other layers might create some problems with the imbalance of your body, your mental conditions, and we'll talk about what kind of problems that can create chronic conditions. And so because it's an evolution, and some people are prepared for it. Sometimes it's a natural kind of phase, or going from one phase to another. What other times is not a natural phase. I will be talking later on about my experience when I went to the Art of Living in North Carolina, and I registered for a course in Kriya, or Kriya. I believe they call it Kriya breathing, and I will tell you what my experience was from somebody that didn't really believe on. I believe in the chakras. Obviously, I have seen that because I'm using for massage therapy, but I didn't really believe in the Kundalini or anything like that. I was very skeptic at the beginning, but I will tell you my experience later on. So we're gonna look at some early symptoms of early release of the Kundalini. And as you can see, we haven't really talked about the Kundalini because what I wanted you to see is a couple pictures before, so that way you get an idea of kind of like a circulation in a way, or like the way that the Kundalini operates on the human body. So the Kundalini is conceived by the Hindus to be a coiled up energy which resides at the base of the spine in the root chakra. The root chakra, as you can see, is the one on the bottom. It is designated here with the red star, and it's called Muladhara. And that chakra has to do with survival instincts, basic instincts like food, shelter, sex, most normal natural urges that a person might have in its primitive form. So most people, this energy is asleep, but it can be aroused through a number of practices involving, for example, yoga, meditation, and diksha, which is the transmission of energy from an awakened person. You can also do this with yoga or breathing exercises. If you're planning, if you have come here to learn about yoga and chakras because you were thinking about raising your Kundalini little by little, I will give you some resources later, but I will recommend that you always do it under the guidance of a teacher that has at least 5 to 10 year training in a center in which is certified and is reliable. Like, for example, the Art of Living Center in North Carolina. So when the energy is aroused for the Kundalini, it extends through the spinal column in the what is called Sushumna channel, passing through each of the chakras on its way to the brain. And then from the brain, the energy rises through the Ida or the pinnacle channels, as you can see, normally called the crown and the eye chakra. So what are the symptoms of early Kundalini release? Since we are all individuals with our own history and physical conditions, personal and spiritual development, the Kundalini release acts differently with each one of us. So there are some symptoms that might indicate an excessive release of Kundalini. So some people might release Kundalini too early or too strongly at every phase, and that creates motions and things in their life that are, they might have more difficulties in different areas of their life, or physical difficulties, chronic illnesses. So for example, there are some symptoms that might indicate an excessive release of Kundalini before the system is ready. For example, unexplained illness that comes and goes, erratic behaviors, a feeling of losing it, and difficulty coping with everyday life. So some people might call this, we're going to talk about depression later, but this is something different than depression. This is more almost like sort of like an early onset anxiety. Chills or hot flashes, evidence of multiple personalities, excessive mood swings, depression or ecstasy. Maybe you are in your life, you're living your life, and all of a sudden things in your life don't make sense to you. It kind of reminds me a little bit of that movie with Tom Cruise, in which he was a baseball coach or a baseball entrepreneur, and he was in charge, or an agent, and he was in charge of a bunch of people, and all of a sudden he has an awakening. Sort of kind of the same thing. Also, you can have times of extreme dullness or brilliance, so it can be alternating. Loss of distortion of memory is very common. Disorientation with oneself, with others, and work in the world in general. Like you don't feel like you fit in. We see this with younger people, very younger people, that tend to suffer with bouts of melancholy, or they don't feel like they belong, or they feel older than their years, things like that. Extremes in appearance. So a person may fluctuate between looking years younger and one moment, and then another week they look like they're 20 years older. Visual effects such as seeing lights or colors, geometric shapes or scenes. Sometimes if you have done past life regression therapy, you might be able to recall past life events. So what is the purpose of the Kundalini and raising the Kundalini? Well, the Kundalini has its own sense of direction. Its natural flow is up the spine and out the top of the head. Along the path, it brings new awareness, new abilities, and transcendental stages. So pretty much it's helping you evolution as a person, but as a spiritual being mostly. The Kundalini pushes us to reach for enlightenment. It removes any energy blocks, and this is really important because energy blocks is what creates some of the illnesses or dis-ease in the body. And we can help or hinder the process. So sometimes people don't know exactly what's going on, but they try to block unconsciously the Kundalini for rising. So this can be very harmful for the person, like we say, because you are kind of blocking energy to go through certain parts of your body. And so we're going to talk about that later on. But a fully developed person with exceptional paranormal gifts, great spiritual awareness, and truly be considered genius or godlike. So each of us, what is important, each of us must deal with Kundalini sooner or later. The more knowledgeable that we are, the more wonderful the experience will be. And as you can see, I I found this information online, and I thought it was important to know that the origin of the rainbow chakras, I found it very interesting, and the Kundalini serpent derived from the Yoruba Orisa system of ancient West Africa, which is deified in the divinity of Osumare. And this was later taken to Kemet, which is in ancient Egypt, and became the Urias, and then transferred to the Andamanese of ancient India, who established yoga, which influenced Buddhism. Which right now, if you're talking about chakras, most people know this system through Ayurveda practices or Hindu medicine. So let's talk about involuntary release. And as you can see, one of our symbols for this, it's funny how symbols, I hope you take my symbols course or my symbols, you watch the symbols video, but it is funny how symbols go through culture and they're used for different things. So the Roman troops actually used this symbol, but they changed the symbol on the top, which now represents for the eagle, when they were going through the different provinces and conquering the different provinces, through Spain and France and Italy. Obviously, this is like Roman Jesus time, right? But now it's called the caduceus, and we also use it for anything that's healthcare related. So it's interesting how when you go to a pharmacy, you will see the symbol also. So the symbol of what we call the medical caduceus, I believe is pronounced like that. It is actually the Kundalini, the symbol of the Kundalini. So the Kundalini energy, like we said before, lies coiled at the base of the spine. Its release may be likened to waves, flames, pulsations, or uncoiling. The uncoiled portion seeks an outlet, normally through the spine, up to the top of the head, and out what is sometimes called the crown chakra. So the chakra, which is a Sanskrit word meaning wheel, refers to the various energy vortices on our etheric body. So remember, I told you that there are 7 different bodies. Our etheric body contains the chakras, and these chakras are spinning at different frequencies, and we'll talk more about chakras later on, but I don't want to get too much involved with this. But just for you to know that this is what determines how a person's frequency and health and people that you're attracted to, money that you're attracted to, pretty much anything related with frequency. Some people call it the law of attraction in a way, but that's just oversimplifying. But sometimes the energy calls upward around the spine, as you can see in the picture, again ending at the crown chakra. It is a natural evolutionary process, and the number of layers of waves are individually released during a lifetime, depending on a person's growth and readiness. The movement of the wave is so imperceptible, most people are not aware of the activity, though they might be aware of some heat or energy movement in the tailbone area prior to the release. More sensitive people will feel the energy progress up the spine. They might feel pressure or pain as the energy encounters a blocked area. Pain may also appear when the energy patterns are not normal. There are many layers of the Kundalini waiting to be released. The action is similar to peeling off the outer edges of an onion. A person can release a few or many layers during a lifetime. People knowledgeable about the Kundalini force may choose to release more, thus speeding the evolution in extreme cases in which people are trying to do this very fast or might be doing unconsciously. They might be very extreme. Like for example, it might be extreme heat that might be released. So what is Kundalini awakening, and how do you know if you have one? So the Kundalini is sometimes called Shakti. the divine spark of a life force, and begins its ascent from the base of the tailbone, like we said, where it is stored. As it rises up the spinal column and goes up the top of the head, it blends with the spiritual energy available in the universe. An energy combination then showers down over the body and travels down through the system, aiding in refining and cleansing the cells. If the Kundalini is blocked in its upward flow by improper energy patterns or negativity, or by an improperly prepared or cleansed body, it may drop after several days and then begin a slow, painful ascent up the body again, cleaning and refining as it goes. This process can create much havoc and may cause physical, emotional, or mental distress. Now, I wanted to just very briefly to mention what happened to me. As I told you, I went to the Art of Living about 2 years ago in North Carolina, in a time of my life in which I was feeling very much down. I was extremely depressed because things were going well in my life, but I wasn't really finding meaning in many things. I wasn't finding meaning in my relationship. I feel like I have lost my children. There were different personal things that were happening in my life. So I decided that it might be a good thing to go to North Carolina for a couple days, 2 or 3 days, to the Art of Living. And I've heard about the Art of Living because I started to, when I started having chronic pain that came out of nowhere, I started to do yoga and found this on a magazine, on a yoga, I believe actually it was called Yoga Magazine. So I decided to go there. To try to make a long story short, so I don't bore you, we were trained, or we started to get trained on something called Kriya breathing, which I will put the technique later and some information at the end of the video for you. Now, Kriya breathing, I did not believe. Supposedly I have gone there, there was a group of 25 people with me, and they were gonna teach us the technique, and supposedly what the instructor told us, and this was a person that is from India, had been trained on doing this by a guru, which is very famously known right now, and he had been doing this for at least 15-20 years. So what he told me was that they release the Kundalini through Kriya breathing. What they're doing is they're pushing all the blocks or things that you have in your body to come out. And there's 2 phases of it, and then a recuperation. So first they teach you Kriya breathing, then they kind of push all this energy that is bad out of your body, and then they which I'm guessing right now it was the Kundalini rising, the different layers, they try to raise the Kundalini and try to push some of that energy that it doesn't serve you, or some of those blockages that don't serve you. And then what they do is they try to close that up, because once you open the chakras, you have to close it up. The Kundalini comes out through the most weaker chakra that you have in your body. So I decided to give it a try. I was very skeptic of the process. Long story short, on the first day we spent the whole day talking with the group. The second, third day we were just walking, meditating, doing yoga. The fourth day we started with the Kriya. Every night, of course, they teach us a little bit of the Kriya breathing. The fifth day that I was there, I believe it was fourth or fifth day that I was there, then I did the first part of the Kriya breathing. The whole exercise took about an hour. I can say the experience, and I can only talk to my experience, what I felt during that experience. And this is what I felt. At first, I was not feeling anything for the first 10 minutes. I wasn't really concentrating. It was really difficult for me to concentrate because you have to have been doing yoga for a while or have that ability. And you know what I mean. You guys have to have a restful mind if you haven't done that in a while. However, after 10 minutes, I started to feel of doing the breathing. First of all, you start getting very tired. You start lacking oxygen, and then the body starts to respond in a way in which you can't really control your body, which was a little scary for me. And I felt from my plexus all this energy, like somebody was taking energy from me, like a bunch of energy just pulling out. And I don't know, I believe that I might have been, I don't want to say that I was the only one in the room that felt that, but I didn't see anybody saying anything except me. And I look at my professor and my instructor, and I said, who's doing that? Because I felt that somebody was pulling all that energy out of me, and I felt like I was being robbed of the energy. Now, after that was done, that took about maybe 5 minutes. And after that was done, I felt extremely good and relaxed. And then he said, we're gonna take a break, and the second part will come tomorrow. Today you're gonna be really tired, which we were. That night I got really sick, extremely sick, like physically sick. I felt like I had the flu. I was running a fever. So there were physical symptoms. There was nothing with me the morning prior. There was nothing with me the day before. So the next morning, I went to him, to my instructor, and said, I don't think I can do the second part because I don't feel good. I was nauseous. I just felt like throwing up. I had been really sick and I wanted to stay in bed. He told me, you need to finish today because you need to close that or you're going to be in a lot of pain. Of course, I didn't listen to him and decided that the whole experiment had scared the crap out of me, and decided to go back to Florida driving 10 hours. When I got to Florida, I was sick for almost a week, and the symptoms will not go away, to the point that I thought maybe I should come back again, and obviously that he was right. After 10 days, I felt like the blockages that had been there before were back. Because one thing I noticed after that bad energy had come out of my body was that I was feeling much better. My thoughts were better, and I believe they came back with force. So it was not at all an experiment. So I really definitely, you have to experience by yourself. I think everybody is gonna have a different experience. I think it depends what kinds of things are blocking your body, but I do believe that you really need to do this with somebody that is a teacher, that is an instructor that has been doing this for a long time. Alright, so now that I have told you my story and completely bored you to death, I'm gonna talk to you more about what happens when a person releases, like I did, layers of energy at once. So once you release that, as I told you before, you might be in a beautiful state for days or even weeks. So you might have extra physical strength. That's true, I do feel much stronger. Beautiful new understandings and feelings of bliss or transcendental awareness, or feeling of really having made it and achieving enlightenment. You might even experience a little spiritual pride. For most people, however, this state disappears and the Kundalini begins its cleansing process again. The person wonders why things are not so difficult and where the wonderful stuff went. So the latter is the usual pattern of Kundalini release. It is not a matter of a person messing up his or her growth. When energy blocks are severe enough, like mine were, blissful states do not occur. The energy goes immediately into the cleansing. So energy blocks are caused by locked-in attitudes of feelings or all emotional and mental scars. And I want to say that people that have suffered a lot of traumatic abuse or injuries, either physical or emotional, have a much harder process releasing layers of Kundalini. Poor posture and injuries can also create energy blocks. People who have prepared well by taking care of their bodies and raising spiritual awareness will accomplish Kundalini cleansing more quickly and easily. And they realize the benefits almost immediately, and the Kundalini rising is a beautiful experience. Once it's released, however, it's not turning back. It's impossible to reverse the process, though it sometimes can be slow. If a person decides the growth is no longer desirable and tries to hold back this energy, congestion and illness may result. See, I told you that's what happened exactly to me. In extreme cases, will lead to death. One must learn to work with it, and in some cases, just survive it. The change is usually not a magical total overnight operation. The energy may take as long as 20 to 25 years to complete cleansing. Now, there are different types of involuntary release. The energy not only has an evolutionary purpose, but it gives us extra energy. The body may draw from it to handle extreme situations. So when situations conclude, the flow continues and the person does not handle things well, the person now deals with excessive Kundalini release. In the Aquarian age right now, this is very intense. The intensity speeds up our evolution and pushes us into quantum leap in some areas. So you might see a lot of people right now that are saying, oh, I'm awake, or I just awakened to this new thing, or people that are questioning things that are happening around the world. That is the Kundalini working. Some similar growth is happening in people in personal and spiritual areas, and we're just at the beginning of major breakthroughs in these areas because so much Kundalini will be released spontaneously as a result of the intensity of new energies. So this is happening whether people or not are cleansed and ready. So those people who genetically are more receptive to the Kundalini and already have a fair amount usable and active will not have that much trouble, but astrological energies also play an important part in a person's openness to extra release. So if you're on the Saturn, and I know some of you don't believe in astrology, but it is said that Saturn and the Moon in Scorpio also tends to awaken deep subconscious energies. So some pregnant women may experience extra Kundalini release from the pressure of the fetus, or they experience more psychic ability than awareness during pregnancy. Others may experience more postpartum depression, possibly caused by improper Kundalini flow release during pregnancy. Now, I found it very interesting that they're talking about people who have overworked for years. And for example, if you're a person that is hard worker, you're nervous, you're physical, you're emotional, and you take everything to heart, you have had depression or excessive anxiety, it may require several months or years to recover. Many times, this is also attributable to excessive Kundalini. These people later relate to their enforced rest. That happens to me, in which sometimes I work for a year or two like non-stop, go, and then all of a sudden my batteries are just like off, right? I don't have any more energy, and I have to take at least a week to recuperate. So this is time for you to think and change your lives, and Kundalini forces us to think and change our way of being during this time. Now, if you have suffered some kind of tailbone injury, it is difficult for you to raise the Kundalini from that part because is forcing you to continually work with the energies and the changes that they bring. The positive side is that the person that has extra Kundalini tends to have a very active evolutionary growth from within. Also, grief, trauma, fear, and hurtful memories can aid in blowing open the subconscious, which is in turn releases a lot of the energies. But of course, it is traumatic, like I said before. The emotional states then usually increase our proportion to reality, and people are prone to obsession. Now, I found really interesting too that people that has, we all carry a little bit muffin top on the front, on our belly area. This might be because of you're carrying too much Kundalini on the back. And some people that have this problem might experience lordosis, for example. Okay, so as you can see in the picture, he has sort of like different symptoms, and of course these symptoms are very difficult and to pinpoint because different people will have different chakras open. So one may compare the Kundalini when a large number of waves are released all at once to a garden hose turned to full force. If the spine is clear and straight, the force flows through the top of the head and hamper, and if blocked or twisted in some way, the free flow is stopped or hamper, and the energy goes into the nearest area, producing a block. Because of the various symptoms and lack of information about Kundalini, the blame for improper and excessive release is generally misplaced, and sometimes people might think that they have back problems or emotional problems or heart and chest problems, when it is the Kundalini that is rising and it's blocked. People may feel hypochondriacal with all the different aches and pains. At times they might feel ill but not actually be ill. They might feel they do have long to live, but at the same time they feel perfectly alright. Confusion is a prevalent emotion when unprepared people experience excessive Kundalini release. Today, misunderstandings can slow down the cleansing process and add years of concern and troubles, because obviously a person might think that there's something wrong with them when there's actually just the Kundalini and it's just part of the growth. Kundalini can also happen in children. Sometimes we call these children old souls. The Kundalini releases during your lifetime, and it might happen faster if that person's soul is more advanced. Misunderstandings can slow down the cleansing process. Some people that are menopause might experience chills or hot flashes similar to those experienced. They might come and go. They might experience psychic gifts. Change of moods and attitudes and dietary, color, and style preferences are common. Some people might experience schizophrenic symptoms as the Kundalini releases energy from strong but unintegrated past life personalities, etc. There are physical, emotional, or mental, traumatic, or static events. So there's different kinds of problems that can happen. Now, if you're experiencing some of these later symptoms, it helps not to be afraid to face the memories locked within. You may seek the expert counseling of a hypnotherapist that is certified, or a family psychologist. When all blocks are released, the Kundalini flows through unhampered, refining the cells and allowing the prana, divine and universal energy, to come into the system in pure and strong